Which actor crushed a role so hard that nobody else will be able to live up to it? Peter Mismer said, Buttercup and Humperdinck both were cast by fine actors who did a good job at the roles. Wesley, Fezzik, Inigo, Vizzini, and Ruggin were pure magic. Even small parts like the grandfather, grandson, Miracle Max and his wife were rather brilliant. Checking them, it looks like the casting was done by Janet Hershenson and Jane Jenkins, who among many other credits also did the casting for Home Alone, Beetlejuice, Jurassic Park, A Few Good Men, Mrs. Doubtfire and Harry Potter. Alter Edwards said, Tom Hanks as Woody in Toy Story. Other characters I feel could be replaced quite easily. Tim Allen is obviously brilliant as Buzz, but it's a pretty standard Captain Kirk-inspired space captain performance. But I just can't imagine Tom Hanks' manic, neurotic Woody being played by anyone else. It's really impressive to see a screen actor do such a good job as a voiceover too. A lot of them end up sucking, because cartoons require pretty big, exaggerated performances for them to work, and actors can seem to either do it or not. Demniauchuste said, Well, I attended JUIR. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague and had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 867 times, and IT keeps getting funnier every single time I see IT. Elizabeth Unseely said, Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling. I particularly love the scene where she looks at Buffalo Bill's victim and you hear her voice crack during the first part of the description, where she is looking at tiny personal details like painted fingernails, but then go clinical and determined when she sees the wounds on the girl's back. Playing badass women often veers either towards emotionless and stalwart, or basically aping an 80s action male role. Foster nailed the emotional vulnerability, ambition, and courage of the character in minute, but profound ways. No one compares. Ebjoker4 said, Absolutely spot on. I don't know shit about acting, but I know she was 100% convincing in that role. Right down to the subtle pure West Virginia accent that sounded like a person who was trying to not sound like she was from West Virginia. So freaking good. Morburn said, Can't recall where I read this, but a while back I came across someone explaining why she was worse. Voldemort is a monster, but we don't get a lot of straight-up monsters in our day-to-day lives. Whereas almost everyone has met an Umbridge, someone with power, even just the smallest piece of it, who enjoys being petty and cruel just for the sake of it, for the pleasure it gives them. She exists outside the books in so many ways, whereas Voldemort just doesn't. Eyepatch Willie said, Hugh Laurie is also a very accomplished blues musician, which led to my favorite exchange in Colbert show history. Ho-ho is British. The blues are the greatest gift America has given to the world. Stephen, do you know the greatest gift Britain has given the world? America. Truffle0214 said, In the lee of a picturesque ridge lies a small, unpretentious winery, one that pampers its fruit like its own babies. Hi, I'm Moira Rose, and if you love fruit wine as much as I do, then you'll appreciate the craftsmanship and quality of a local vintner who brings the muskmelon goodness to his oak Chardonnay, and the dazzling peach crabapple to his Riesling Ryoko. Come taste the difference good fruit can make in your wine. You'll remember the experience and you'll remember the name. Herb Erfling, Jer. Berternjief. Herb Blinger. Bing Livhunger. Liveling. Bird Herkern. Ban Bingoling Fucker. Nostromo7 said, Sir, no, sir. How tall are you, Private? Sir, 5'9", sir. 5'9", I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You trying to squeeze an inch in on me somewhere? Yeah. Sir, no, sir. Bullshit. It looks to me like the best part of you ran down the crack of your mama's ass and ended up as a brown stain on the mattress. I think you've been cheated. Edit. To whomever gave this comment a heartwarming award, if you think these lines of dialogue were heartwarming, oof, I don't know what to say? Thanks, I guess. Edit 2. 5 hours later, thanks for all the awards you silly bastards. Zach Christ 1 said, Do you suck dicks? Sir, no sir. Are you a Peter Puffer? Sir, no sir. Bullshit. You look like the kinda guy who would fuck a man in the ass and not have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around. Edit. For everyone saying he says suck a golf ball through a garden hose, Here is a link to the actual scene. https://m.youtube.com/watch?THXF17YJSKS. TurboBricks7 said. Can you believe the part of Aragorn almost went to Nicolas Cage? Okay, so a slight edit. Nicolas Cage wasn't ever far in the process. He was just one of the first choices the studio had, and I believe it got as far as talking about a contract, but he had other movies to participate in. A sober tool said. I often have thoughts of River's potential career when I'm re-watching old movies. Indian Cine Cursive and though kind of small roles. He was very captivating when he was on screen. I wonder if he would have had a Leo DiCaprio or Hanks type career. Maybe toward the end he even goes the action star Keanu route. I do this with Brandon Lee also. Say what you will about The Crow, and maybe it wasn't that demanding of a role, but he acted the hell out of that character. Every little motion he does or line of dialogue, facial expression is charismatic AF. Even the tone and volume he has in every scene is just amazing for someone who more or less started as an action star. Those two guys would have been absolute bosses if they hadn't passed away. Barf Green Jolteon said. I watched a YouTube video about this. The role was written for him, but Williams made it clear that his likeness voice was not to be used for marketing. Disney straight up broke this agreement, and Williams left the franchise. The Edit, first, direct-to-video sequel of Aladdin suffered greatly, needless to say. It's an interesting watch if you're at all interested. Edits. Yes, Williams did come back after the first DTV sequel. I just meant to briefly summarize the above video, which does a much better job than I could. Res30 Stupid said. That's not even close to describing the epic level fuck-up that was the Aladdin marketing disaster or the true fallout as a result. Robin Williams was working on a passion project with another studio called Toys, and he didn't want to directly compete with it. However, one of the animators for the movie showed him test footage of the genie sync with some of his stand-up recordings that it convinced Williams to take the role despite his misgivings. But he still wanted Toys to succeed, so he made a very clear deal with Disney. He would work for union scale pay, a couple $1,000s instead of his usual asking price of millions, if they kept his name and the genie's likeness out of the movie's advertising. Unfortunately, the person in charge of advertising the movie was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who immediately broke the deal. Aladdin was released a month before Toys and utterly destroyed it at the box office, ensuring the movie wouldn't even make back budget. Williams was so furious that he would never work for Disney again so long as Katzenberg was still employed by the company, and he was the head of the studio's division. He sued Disney in retribution and made it so that the genie couldn't be used in advertising for the company after his death. It's the reason why the songs he sang in the original Aladdin aren't on streaming sites anymore. This was actually one of the many screw-ups that helped force Katzenberg out of the Disney company. Among other things, he had angered some of his other creators such as Res30 Stupid said. The writers and directors of the Disney Renaissance-era movies for claiming sole responsibility for the turnaround of Disney's movie successes during this period, and in particular, he had earned the personal ire of Roy E. Disney, nephew of Walt and son of the original Roy Disney. And if it weren't due to the board directly intervening and giving Pixar another chance, then the executive decisions he made on Toy Story would have seen the movie cancelled outright. The original cut of the movie he was involved in, called the Black Friday cut, soured the board when they saw an early cut of the movie made of concept art that they immediately put production on hold and told the studio that it would have to be completely redone. In fact, the Black Friday cut sees a lot of material that would later become staples of DreamWorks, which was founded by Katzenberg after he left Disney. The movie relied on mean-spirited insult humor, and the original cut version of Woody was a complete bastard. He threatened the other toys to keep them in line, used violence to keep the others in line, and deliberately threw Buzz out of the window. However, what really saw him quit was when he tried to call in a favor from Michael Eisner to become the company's president right after Frank Wells' death in a helicopter crash, which Eisner reneged on, partially because of his sudden and frequent screw-ups making him a bad candidate, also because Roy threatened a stock owner's revolt if he got the job. Charles Trans Fan said, I reckon it was actually Ferngully and not Toys that Robin Williams did not want competing with Aladdin. From the wiki article on Ferngully, the film marked Robin Williams' first animation role, with the character Batty Coda being created specifically for him. Williams provided 14 hours worth of improvised lines for the part, which had been originally conceived as an 8-minute role. Director Bill Croyer was so impressed with the voice work he ended up tripling the screen time given to the character. Williams went on to provide the critically applauded voice of the genie in Disney's Aladdin later the same year. Williams had already agreed to voice Batty Kota before being approached to do Aladdin. Jeffrey Katzenberg, then chairman of Walt Disney Studios, tried to force Williams to withdraw from Fern Gully, on the grounds he did not want him voicing two animated characters around the same time, but Williams refused. According to Wayne Young, Disney repeatedly interfered with the production of Fern Gully, twice taking over spaces the producers had rented by offering to pay more. When the producers eventually set up studio in a former brewery in the San Fernando Valley, Disney attempted to purchase it. Katzenberg declined to comment on the issue when approached by Vanity Fair in 2017. Jukebox Dildo said, Glenn Howerton is honestly one of the greatest and most artfully enigmatic portrayals of a legitimate psychopath potential serial killer as Dennis, Emo. I think that his role in that show will be looked back upon for decades as a standard to aspire to. Personally, his forced, let's move the fuck on from whatever is in the way of my current desire because I truly would be happier if you didn't exist laugh is absolutely iconic. His mannerisms and cadence capture the idea that he is literally seconds away from murdering people so well, while also attempting to imitate normal human interaction as best he can. LOL. There's no other fictional character I'm aware of that has made me debate if they are truly insane or not as much or as often as Dennis Reynolds, and that's something. Red Searings 2112 said, his realization is the best. This is exactly what I'm talking about. We immediately escalate everything to a 10. It's ridiculous. I mean, somebody comes in with some preposterous plan or idea. And then all of a sudden, everybody's on the gas. Nobody's on the brakes. Nobody's thinking. Everybody's just talking over each other with one idiotic idea after another. Until, finally, we find ourselves in a situation where we've broken into somebody's house. And the homeowner is home. Daniel Stover said, under his handsome, charming and mostly kind exterior, he already figured you out the moment he looked at you. Oh, and he could brutally murder you himself or have someone very easily do it for him. Really, a once-in-a-lifetime character and performance. Shadrach 451 said, people underestimate the importance of a strong believable villain's role in a story. Gladiator's one of the best movies of all time, and that comes from a well-paced story, with a great hero, and a beautiful setting with wonderful music and effects. But I feel the thing that really seasons all of those elements and brings all of it to a hot boil is Commodus. You are engaged with the story, not just because you want to see the hero succeed, not just because the imagery is wonderful and the cinematics engrossing, but you are chained to the story because you have to see that asshole lose. Managitora said, which is sad, because as far as I can tell, the real reason GQ failed was that it was ahead of its time. If that movie came out now, with updated pop culture jokes, OFC, it'd be a smash hit. It's a fantastic parody and on its own a damn good movie, tries to show the good side of nerd fandom culture, and is just so fucking good. Edit, and the catchphrase chant? Never give up. Never surrender, so fucking good. Reasonable Reindeer said, I remember first seeing the trailer for Black Pearl in theaters. I thought nobody had ever looked as perfect for their role as Johnny looked for Jack Sparrow. The actual performance turned out to be even better than I expected. All these years later, I am still convinced that Jack Sparrow is a real person who spends his time these days playing a character called Johnny Depp. Creme de la Creme said, yup. The others fucked up in a very specific way. Jack is outwardly goofy and aloof, but he's always the most clever person in the room by a mile and, if the formula was followed, which it wasn't, his genius is flexed a handful of times during the movie. The young Jack sequence in Dead Men Tell No Tales is actually a pretty good example of it. It's his first moment of being a captain and it looks like he's doomed everybody, but it was all a plan of his to outmaneuver the veterans of the sea that were hunting him. He juked them so badly, they destroyed themselves. Jinsaku said, they really fucked up his character in the later movies. He was a smart man who played him and appeared to luck his way out of situations, but it was actually that he was so cunning and clever. In later movies, he turned into a fool who mostly lucks his way out of his own predicaments, a parody of his own character. Hope Super said, Bryan Cranston as Walter White in Breaking Bad. He begins as sympathetic and ends up terrifying. And in general the whole cast of Malcolm in the Middle, even the very secondary role. There have been many middle-class effed-up family sitcom but zero have achieved to be crazy and relatable like this show. Prost Hunt said, "Yes, these were going to be my answers too. Anna Gunn played Skylar so well that people actually hate her in real life. BC to them, she's Skylar White. Aaron Paul's performance was definitely my favorite. Such a surprisingly vulnerable, emotional, and nuanced role. He's such a dynamic supporting character. And Giancarlo, wow. I've never seen body language, facial expressions, and voice inflection that matched a character so perfectly." Chrono Legion 2 said, "I remember reading a cracked article that showed a picture of him and Gwyneth Paltrow waving to the crowd in front of an Iron Man movie poster. The article asked if this was RDJ or Tony Stark. Then added that the poster doesn't mean anything, since Stark would have happily showed up to a movie about himself." Huskau Flask said, "I thought the same thing about Patrick Stewart as Professor X, but James McAvoy changed my mind. Depending how mutants are introduced into the MCU, they could do something similar and start with a young Wolverine. Edited for clarity, by which I mean they'd start with youngish Wolverine in present-day MCU, not showing young Logan in the 1800s. No matter how you slice it, pardon the pun, MCU Wolverine is going to be different than comic Wolverine." Little C 6868 said, "Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Could have been so easy to make the character just another forgettable villain, but he brought so much depth and subtle touches to the role that I can't picture anyone else doing it justice. I want him as Loki forever. Margot Robbie in anything she does, specific alias Harley, but she was amazing in I, Tonya too. The woman is a freaking chameleon and a fantastic method actor. Dave Bautista as Drax, just because he's so delightful and steals the movie." Grenda said, "Mark Hamill does a great job capturing the cackling madman version of the Joker. When they're allowed to go really dark with the Joker, he's basically Jigsaw but with an emphasis on ironic death and suffering and no intention of letting people survive. The bit that completely sold me on it was the opening of Arkham Asylum when you overhear him answering the phone of one of the dead guards and telling the man's wife that he'll put him on, before handing the phone to the corpse. That level of cruelty and humor defines the Joker, and frankly if he wasn't such a valuable property I would love to see Batman done as a horror movie instead of a classic superhero flick. Bruce Wayne is more of a vigilante private detective, but emphasis on him being human and on how absolutely fucked up this Joker psychopath is, with Batman as more of a traditional horror movie protagonist who often survives more because he has enough grit to hobble out of a death trap that should have paralyzed him with shock.